And I think what I really want to say in this episode is just like sex is powerful, my friends. It is powerful and it is potent. And if sex is not something you want at all right now, and if sex is something you can't even imagine yourself wanting, I just invite you to consider the power of like what I just shared that you're missing. You're missing out on this opportunity for really, really deep healing and really, really deep, beautiful connection. Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, childbirth, or joining a blended family. I am your host, Sophia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy, connected, and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in your relationship and yourself after kids. I am so glad you are here. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Sex After Kids podcast, our first episode in the new year. It's a bit of a doozy. I hinted on my IG stories the other day that I had a triggering sexy episode, a trauma healing sexy episode a couple of days ago. And so I wanted to come on and share. I wanted to come on and share for a lot of reasons. I wanted to come on and share because it's a really great example of how sex with the right person can be healing, and that sex itself is not always the outcome isn't always orgasmic bliss, but can actually be like amazing release of really old patterns and really old wounds. And a lot of you folks often have questions for me about that process and what it looks like. And the other reason I want to share is because I had some pretty big breakthroughs and some pretty big ahas, and I hope that there will be something of value for you in that. I will share a bit of a trigger warning. I don't think it's much, but I am going to talk a little bit about some of my traumas. I would consider them fairly minor, all in all. That being said, they have still left their mark. So if that's not on the menu for you today or ever, then just skip on by and you can catch the next episode. But with that, let's dive into it. So, let's start by setting the scene. And I'm going to leave it for another podcast episode to talk about how we got into making love that night, because it was a perfect textbook example of the Naked Sexy Times framework that I teach. But long story short, big kid was away, little kids were asleep. We had a window. We decided to take it. And we did our thing. We're getting in the mood. And on this particular day, I was down for playing with myself and getting myself to orgasm, because that's kind of what I wanted to do. So we were playing around, doing our thing. And it was feeling like it was taking me a particularly long time to get there. I don't know if you resonate with this. I would love to hear from you if this is an experience that you have. This is something I struggled with through most of my 20s, but it's like I was chasing the orgasm. It was moving on me. I would feel like I was getting so close and then it would disappear, or I'd have kind of moments of numbness intermingled with moments of lots of sensation. And so, like, who knows how long it was actually even taking, but in my mind, forever. And my husband could see, like, he was reading that I was getting a little tense, getting a little frustrated. And I eventually did kind of like stop and give a bit of a huffed sigh and just like, ugh, I'm fucking irritated with this sort of moment, right? And my hubby was lovely. We didn't go right into the like, do you need trauma support today? He just was like, hey, can I give it a go? Like, do you want to relax a little bit? And it's interesting because during all that time, right, I'm like noticing that I'm getting frustrated, but I'm not cluing in that I'm having like a trauma response yet. I'm not feeling deeply emotional, as in, like, I'm not feeling sad. I'm not feeling tears come yet. I'm just feeling irritated and bored and annoyed, which are feelings that can arise when we're starting to have a trauma response during sex or sexy times or foreplay or any of it. Um, and so he starts to go down on me, and I'm breathing a little bit and trying to get present. And while I had been touching myself, I had been trying to coach myself into, like, you're reaching too hard for this, let go a little bit. You're clenching too much, like, breathe a little bit more. And my husband had been encouraging me to breathe a little bit more. And so while he was giving it a go, I was breathing a little bit more. And at this point, like, tears were on the edge, but I was still very actively, but subconsciously or semi-consciously, um, not allowing them, right? So I could feel tears kind of gently rising. I knew that if I took a deep breath in and I tried to vocalize, if I tried to do like an ah or like a sigh, that I would have started sobbing. And I don't remember actively thinking like I don't want to cry right now. Um, but definitely I was like doing everything I could to like not. So eventually I tired with my partner going down on me. It was interesting because normally I will very like unconsciously transition to I'm bored with this. I want you to just stick it in me so we can like finish and wrap up. And instead I was just feeling like I wanted something different and I wanted to move to intercourse. So we did that. I went down on him. We were having some fun. And then I went on top and we're doing the do. And my partner is so lovely. We had like no one has openly acknowledged that I'm having a trauma response yet, although I think we can both kind of like quietly read that that is what's happening. And he just invites me to do some union breathing with him while we're making love. So we're breathing together in and out. We're kind of cycling our breath. And I'm enjoying things. The sensations are nice. There isn't really much of a climax build up for me, but at this point, I've got a lot of complex emotions happening. And so I'm happy to just enjoy what's happening for right now and for us to close. And when we do, I just sort of like nuzzle into his arm and breathe a little bit. And then this thought enters my mind, and I just start to sob. And bless his soul, my husband just holds me. He doesn't talk, he doesn't ask questions. He just lets me cry in his arms. So, what was that thought, right? The thought was, and like this is going to sound a little bit maybe weird off the top, so just follow with me for a minute to see where it goes, right? But the thought was, is it him you're really mad at? Is it him you're frustrated with? Is it him you feel critical of in terms of, he can't just touch you right, he can't read you right, he can't please you right? Or is it all the men and all the shitty sex that came before him? Is it all the times that you ended up in the sack, convincing yourself that you wanted to get laid and waking up the next morning feeling so alone in the world and realizing that it was love that you were looking for between the sheets, right? And I'm speaking to myself here, although if it's resonating for you, is it all the times that I didn't really want to, but cajoled and convinced myself into it? Is it all the times that I wanted to say no but didn't because I didn't feel safe or I felt pressured? Is it all the times that I felt unsafe in my body, being looked at, being spoken to, or being touched in ways that made me shrink, made my skin crawl, made me feel gross, made me feel like an object? All the things, right? It was kind of this moment where I could just see so clearly how a lot, I think, of my experience in bed with my partner, with my current partner, is like a projection of he's like a convenient outlet for all the anger, frustration, like sadness that I have from past experiences, right? And so it's easy to take it out on him. And it's also easy to take it out on myself and to blame myself for all of those experiences, um, to blame myself for self abandoning in those experiences, even though I would have been protecting myself in those experiences and responding in those experiences. And I think the other image that really came to me in that moment is there have been periods in our sex life where neither of us has been as fluent and acknowledging like when a trauma response has arisen for me. And when that happens, sex ends usually pretty quickly, and I would kind of like roll over, disconnect from him, and just feel like all the loneliness in the world. And it was kind of in that moment the other night where I realized, like, was all that loneliness in the world, like, was I really feeling disconnected from him in that moment and like isolated from him in that moment? Or was all that loneliness in the world me like curling up and protecting myself against like all the shittiness that I've experienced that was activated in that moment of intimacy with my partner, right? And I wonder how much of that is true for all of us, right? Like, how much of it is us having experiences that we've had arising for us in a sexual experience, um, and then us throwing that, sticking it onto our partner, blaming our partner for it when it really comes from somewhere else. I don't think I've ever seen that so clearly before. And it's kind of like I know people who like they'll be in an argument with their partner and then they'll realize that the things that they're yelling are like from a previous relationship. They're stuck in an argument loop that's not from this current relationship. And I think that's kind of what was happening there for me with this piece. So I'm in that moment, I'm bawling my eyes out on my husband's shoulder, and I'm just literally having flashes, right? I'm having flashes of the redhead's hairy shoulders who took me home after a lackluster date and then literally hid in the bathroom the next morning until I clued in that that was his way of asking me to leave. I'm having flashes of the army guy who took me out drinking at 18 when I was first down at university, and somehow I ended up in the dorm room with the one I didn't find cute, exploring more than I ever had, titillated and curious, but shy and nervous, and with a half hearted no that was repeated and ignored all night long, right? Flashes of following some guy around at a party all night, just hoping I would be the last girl standing and that he would take me to bed. And I mean, none of these are major, but they're clearly major in the impressions that they have left on my body, in the junk that they have left in my emotional trunk, so to say, right? My sex coaching journey started because I spent my 20s thinking I couldn't orgasm. And I spent my 20s wondering if there was more to this whole sex thing. I spent my 20s feeling like my vagina was broken. I spent my 20s trying to find love, trying to be seen through sex, as most of us girls are taught to. And I am so grateful now to be with a partner who is safe and to be with a partner who loves me so loyally, a partner who will watch dorky sex videos with me and try breathing and chanting and fancy penis holds, and a man who will learn to read my energy and notice when I'm blocked in bed and when I need to be held and when I need to cry and to just be there for it all. So I guess what I kind of want to highlight there is when we're talking about healing using sex, whether we're healing from sexual trauma or any kinds of trauma, what that looks like is emotions rising during a sexual experience, whether that's nervousness, boredom, anger, frustration, irritation, sadness, loneliness, wanting to cry, wanting to yell, any of it. Um, then that is an example of traumas kind of bubbling up, right? So those traumas are moments where it was too much, too fast, too soon for your nervous system. There was an overwhelm. You didn't close the cycle on that overwhelm. So that moment got stuck in your body somewhere, and now it's getting released. It's asking to be let go of. And the reason that this can happen during sex is because sexual energy, that horniness energy, that orgasm energy, that energy is what can help us to sort of push those memories, those traumas like out of the system. So it can look like emotions coming up like I had. It can also look like that fickle pleasure where there's like numbness or irritation and pain in your physical body. Um, and those are another example of ways that trauma is kind of bubbling up and saying, hey, I'm here to be released. So what happens is most of us don't know that this is what's happening. And so, like I still have a tendency of doing, our body just goes, I can't deal with this right now. I'm having sex with my partner. I'm not supposed to like cry and have a big emotional release of some kind, or I don't feel safe to do that because is he even going to know what the heck's going on? So I'm just going to like bubble that down, bubble that down, bubble that down, which means we're just giving up any shot we've got at orgasm or orgasm that's going to feel good. And when we learn to recognize that a trauma response is coming up and understand how to deal with it, the beauty is you get to unload it then. And I didn't use my Tantra tools that night other than breathing. But if we had done some energy work, if we had done some other things, if we had used the energy of my orgasm and like been more patient with it to help me push out more of that block, I probably would have had an even more powerful release. But the point is that we just have to close that cycle, right? So when we had the initial trauma, our nervous system got activated, everything got locked in. And now we need to breathe it out, cry it out, move it out, shake it out, sigh it out, whatever, orgasm it out to move it on through the system. And then it's gone. And the amount of release that you can feel when you've completed the cycle is huge. And sometimes it's subtle, having been there, right? Um, so all this to kind of say this is what shows us like what that cycle kind of looks like. And it means having a partner that also understands what that cycle looks like and having a partner that can notice when we are tensing and notice when we are checking out and use tools to kind of bring us back in, right? I think what I really want to say in this episode is just like sex is powerful, my friends. It is powerful and it is potent. And if sex is not something you want at all right now, and if sex is something you can't even imagine yourself wanting, I just invite you to consider the power of like what I just shared that you're missing. You're missing out on this opportunity for really, really deep healing and really, really deep, beautiful connection. I mean, the way that that builds trust in my relationship for my partner to see me that vulnerable and to hold me that vulnerable is huge. And he has his own traumas, and we can use the same tools to hold him through, right? I could have very easily missed this breakthrough moment because I wasn't really in the mood that night, because my period was coming, because it was 10 p.m. and too late, because my partner needed me to initiate that night and put in some effort, and I wasn't really into it. Because we can always have sex tomorrow. And because it was awkward as fuck for the first 10 minutes or so. Like, let's be real. But I used my tools. I noticed the intention that I had to connect and the opportunity that we had. I invited my partner. We dove in. We landed in the present. We got there. And, that night was more hard than fun, but we overcame the moments of disconnect so that I could allow him to really hold me and I could allow him to let me sink into it, which is something I am not good at as a controlling mama. Like, this has always been the battle, the challenge, right? Is like the amount of um project management, like super momming I do, super womaning that I do in real life around like anticipating everything and controlling everything and being 10 steps ahead is like completely the opposite to my need to surrender fully in bed in order to like enjoy myself, right? And because we went there, like we invested in our sex skills bank account. We invested in our connection time. I got to shed some layers of trauma that are just gonna like open me up to even more pleasure and even more fun the next time that we go. It's not a one and done journey here, and who knows why that showed up on that particular night, right? So, all that to say, sex is powerful. Sex can do so much for you and your relationship if you are willing to show up to it, like the mat, like yoga, like meditation, like any spiritual practice. And not force yourself into it, but invite yourself into whatever you're willing to show up to that day. And remind you that, like, you're trying to be the best volleyball player ever without ever having ever like gone to a clinic or been coached or even like watched games being played so that you can like observe strategy. um there is an art to being a good lovemaker. There is an art to knowing how to deal with the trauma that's arising for you in that moment. And most of the shitty sex you are having comes from a lack of sex education where nobody really knows how to please anybody anyways, and definitely a wall of small and large sexual traumas that you do not know how to deal with when they arise. So, I hope this episode has given you some insight into what it can look like when sexual trauma arises. And if you're a partner, I'd love to hear from you too. And like, have you noticed this kind of thing come up in your partner where maybe she gets emotional, maybe they wiggle away when there's a certain kind of position that you're doing, maybe they kind of close their eyes, shut down, tune out, so they're still like doing the do, but they don't feel really present. These are all signs that a trauma reaction is coming up, and these are all signs that as a team, you want to up your game on how to respond in these situations so that you can use them to heal, to get closer, and to find those awesome vibes that you're looking for in your relationship, both in and out of the bedroom. I will leave it at that today, my friends. I am absolutely here to hear from you. DM me on Instagram, email me if there's something in this episode that resonated for you. And if you want to hop on a Sex After Kids Reset Roadmap call, whether you're struggling with orgasm or you haven't had sex in forever and you just don't even know how to show up to an invitation for yourself, give me 30 minutes of your time. I'll walk you through my 5-part framework and you will have a sex date that does not suck before Valentine's Day. Talk to you soon. This is the part where we do the end bit, right? My friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. Take a deep breath in. Open that mouth and let out a big, deep, full body sigh. Voila. Your nervous system thanks you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that your head and your heart have something new to consider, something new to talk about, and something new to try. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his help and original music composition. Love you, babe. This podcast was recorded on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and Tonquichan Council in Whitehorse, Yukon. We acknowledge and are grateful to the original stewards of this land where we get to play, live, and raise our children. You can catch me on the Instagram at the Happy V Project for tips, tools, and anecdotes. And you can also join the weekly-ish newsletter for dispatches from my bedroom and my brain. Also, head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn more about how you can work with me. Catch you next time.